everybody, and welcome back to Exit Podcast. Today's special guest is Liat Arama. She's the co-founder and CEO at Keezy.ai. How are you, Liat? Welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Of course,
thank
we're
you
thrilled
so
to death to
much.
have you.
Very interesting topic. I'm kind of excited to have this conversation, but before we get into what your current status is, do you want to give us like a brief breakdown of who you are, where you came from, how you got into this industry?
Sure, gladly. So, without aging at all, I started my career a little over 20 years ago at Microsoft. My role there was partner account manager, and what I was doing is helping small businesses implement technology into their business, which was very interesting line of work because you get to hear, what are their pains, how can technology help them, how can you save them time, make them more efficient. Was fun times. Later in life, I've moved to Seattle, Washington, and at that point, I diverted myself into real estate investments. I opened my own little investment firm, if you will, and I started doing fix and flips, and later on multifamily fix and flips, and kind of like I had a 10-year journey, or 10-year journey. Jeez, it's been a long time in that space. At some point, we've opened a syndication group and started working with, other people's money so that we can grow faster and scale. Got to a point where we ran about $40 million worth of real estate through our fund. In the process, I've opened my own property management arm because I saw many problems in this industry and how it ran. And that was what brought me to start Keezy, which is essentially a new age AI first property management platform. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No worries.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been all through the road, but you started out in software, and that's probably the entire time you're doing real estate, you're thinking, there's an easier way. Let's figure this out. And I'm assuming that's what you're doing now.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
I literally started with running real estate with pen and paper, and then Excel spreadsheet. And I remember back in the days, my Excel spreadsheet was like, oh my gosh, this industry has never seen what you click a number here and it changes there, and all your assumption, and that's kind of how I got into this adventure.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, can you talk a little bit about how working at a place like Microsoft prepared you for a life of entrepreneurship? I know a lot of folks go into sort of those jobs with the Microsofts, the Facebooks, the Googles, and but that's like their career. That's where they're going.
Mm-hmm.
So here you are. You've gone separate ways from Microsoft, and you've started your own thing. So how did your time working for one of those big name tech players help influence you in starting Keezy?
It's the fear of the golden cage that made me be an entrepreneur. It's very warm and fuzzy in Microsoft. You get paid well, everything is fine, you have your reviews, all is great, it's a fantastic job, a great career, but it's just putting all your baskets in one egg. You have one career, and if something goes sideways and you lose your career, you have nothing else left. So I started the real estate investing with the thought, me and my husband, I should say, with literally the fear of what happens if we lose this job. Because as great as and amazing as we are, it's a job, and the way we are looking at it, it is safer to have your own income streams versus just rely entirely on one W-2. So that was kind of like how we got into it. And then it's like a snowball. You roll into it, you fall in love with it, or get addicted to it, depending on the day you ask me. But that's kind of like how we found our way into that world.
Okay.
Can I ask a question regarding that? Lots of people that get into real estate read the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series. Is that what triggered it for you, or did you just happen into it naturally and then find out about that book later?
Actually, my husband read it. I can't even tell you at what point of the journey he did. But what got us into real estate was at some point we did a research of, okay, where's the money? who has most money in the United States and where are they putting it. And we found out that there is I don't remember the exact percentage, but significant, large amount of people with money have real estate investments. So we thought, okay, if it's good for them, it must be good for us. And then we ran our numbers and the number worked and, started small and rolled into bigger and bigger.
Can you
There
talk
is also,
about
there is also coming from strategy and marketing and sales. At the end of the day, when you are in real estate, then your product is the land and they don't make any more land.
exactly
And that
100%?
is really appealing.
So can you talk about your first few properties? There's a learning curve involved in getting into it. Maybe some mistakes, things you could have done different. Those are usually where you learn the most out of. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got very lucky at the beginning of my journey, my husband and I. We started in the right time, which we didn't know it's the right time, but it was right after the last recession. So we were kind of like here, which ended up being a really good time to enter the market, but we didn't know that. We were just in the right space in mind when we did that. We've done a couple of projects in cheaper markets in Atlanta and in Memphis that were doing really well for us. And then one of our first projects, hands-on in Washington State, we bought in an auction. Literally, I don't know if you know how this works, but you go on the stairs of the hallway, boom, you lift your hand and you own a property. And what we got was a shed, literally a shed in Green Lake in Seattle. It's a fantastic neighborhood, but this was a shed. And when I went there the first time, there was a homeless living there that I had to evict. There was the thing was falling apart. My husband and I, our plan was to remodel and sell. There was no way to remodel this thing. We found ourselves building a new construction from scratch. More money than we planned to spend, more time than we spent to invest, a lot more stressed than we were planning to have. But we had no choice. We already owned the land. There was no refunds. You can't go back. It's not like going to Target, right? There's no refund. So we found ourselves doing that project. And we got lucky because we started here. By the time our construction was done, the market was here. And we ended up selling it for a really, really, really great price, made good profit on it. And that basically made us lose fear, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because after you have such a great success, you went through what you went through. It was very difficult, lots of mistake, of course. But when we were done, we were like, okay, this thing is working and there is even wiggle room for mistakes here, so bring us more. And then we did another one and another one. We've done single family houses that we bought in auction. I've done about over 20 of these before we realized that the season for that ends and it's time to change strategy. And then we've moved to multifamily, which in my opinion is the best real estate investment you can do.
Yeah. So can we talk a little bit? You use the language project to talk about your property, and I wonder if that doesn't come from maybe your work experience too. Maybe this is how you compartmentalize these properties. But I'm wondering about it, and I guess I really like the idea of thinking about it as a project, because I think there are a lot of people who are maybe interested in getting into real estate, but it is intimidating and it's scary and it's expensive and it's all these things. But I think when you think about it as a project, it gives you the opportunity to have sort of to start with the end in mind, so to speak. You know what the plan is for this property. Where I think a lot of people think about investing, like, I'm going to buy this thing and now I have 2 houses and what am I going to do? And it's a lot to manage, So I think people talk themselves out of doing the work because of that. Do you think in your experience, if you were going to encourage somebody, because I have to imagine even for you guys, even if you're doing pretty well financially, just based on your job alone, and you had somewhat of a safety net, let's say, but as you started to move into your first property, I imagine there had to be a little bit of trepidation or a little bit of, fear before you actually pulled the trigger on it. And I mean, what was it that I guess gave you guys the courage or the boost to just say, you know what, let's go for it?
Microsoft Excel. It is a project. It has a start and a finish. You start, you buy something, you have a plan what you're going to do with it. Are you going to remodel? Are you going to rent? Are you going to flip? There is a project, or sometimes there's multiple exit strategies to the project. You put all of that on the Excel, And then you start the tab that calls worst case scenario, and you run the worst case scenario. And then you tell yourself, okay, if everything, not everything, but if most of the bad things will happen at the same time, this is what I'm risking. And now it's a financial decision. That's it. So it is a project, and that is probably something I picked up from Microsoft first time I think about it, but that's how we look at every single real estate investment. And as a matter of fact, that's how we look at every decision that we make in our life. You know,
I
what's the
think what I
best
like
case,
about that,
the
and I
worst
don't know what
case.
kind of work you did at Microsoft, but like, I
Mhm.
mean, but somebody who's project minded or project oriented, like when you go into a property like this, it helps, I guess, strip away the emotion that I think a lot of people have, especially, you know, let's say a small family or something that doesn't have a ton of money, but they're trying to grab a new property or they want to get into the real estate game. And so they're taking a risk.
Mhm.
And I think that, you know, to your point, using something like a spreadsheet to really just lay out the numbers and treat it like a business or like a project rather
Yeah.
than, you know, this thing that we need to have feelings about, unlike the home that, you know, you raise your family in or whatever. You know, I think that that might be one of those little hacks that might help people get over the sort of the emotional hump or the trepidation. Just do the numbers work or don't they work?
Yeah. I'll give you another tip. The way my husband and I were working in the beginning, and we are actually until today. So I am visionary. I can look at the building and see the potential. My husband is not. If he goes into a slum, it looks like a slum to him. He cannot see the potential, but he can read Excel spreadsheet. So the way we were working, I would go see the property, tell him what numbers I need to turn this into something pretty. He would go on the Excel. We would both, you know, vouch for the Excel, and that's it. He wouldn't go and look at the property until after we bought it, because if he, in the few times that he did, we ended up not buying it because he mentally cannot see what I can see. Even the house that we live in, he didn't want to buy. I told him I'll make that house pretty, and he's like, he could not see how is it even possible. And today he loves the house. It is pretty.
Can I ask how you ru- how do you estimate the cost of the flip? Because that could be, you know, you it could be cheap, or you could tear a wall apart and find mold in the walls and have a major problem. Like
Yeah.
what? How do you estimate that where it's you're not necessarily losing every time?
So, first of all, that's exactly where the worst case, best case scenario comes into play. Um, you make a list of what you know for sure you'll have to do. You decide on the level you want to go. There's, you know, A, B, C, D levels of finishes that you want, depending on the product that you're preparing. And then there is the if thens of the unknown. Now, an inspection, if you have the chance to do an inspection before you buy, that takes away a lot of the unknowns, right? Because if you know the age of the plumbing system and the electric system, you can guesstimate the cost a little bit better. But then you always have that contingency line that includes all the things you hope you're not going to have to deal with, but you might. And you just put that in there. And the numbers should be good even if you hit your contingencies. Of course, you don't want to, but that should be part of your business plan. And as long as it's there and the deal still makes sense, it's fine. Sometimes you build a couple of paths. We've had buildings that when we were done with them, we couldn't sell them because we spent too much money. We needed to hold them for a few years and get some money back in cash flow before we can sell them. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. That's what I call plan B. Sometimes you need a plan B. As long as you have a plan, a general plan, and you can go back to your Excel and strategize, you're good. It's a business. It's just like buying a stock.
Okay.
Can you?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, uh, being the property owner and managing property is an entirely different thing. Property management deals with, you know, the lease, the
Mhm.
verifying the tenant, making sure that, you know, they don't destroy the property in the process. The owner usually hires a property manager so they don't have to deal with that. Um, can you maybe talk about the nuances of doing property management versus owning the property? And what are some things that um, why would someone want a property manager if they own property?
Um, yeah. So I was using property management companies at the beginning, and I realized quite early on the journey that I don't like the way they work, because it's it's very emotional. Obviously, to be a property manager, you deal with feelings, you deal with tenants, customer service, but you also need to make decisions that make sense for the owner. The problem with the model is that a lot of time as a property manager, the decision that I would make are not necessarily good for the owner. For example, if I get paid every time I change a tenant, then I would prefer to move in tenants that will stay for 1 year versus moving in those that have families and will stay for a longer time. Or if I mark up repair and maintenance, then when there is a leak, let's tear off the wall and replace all the pipes in the kitchen. Why not? Versus if I'm the owner, then I would like you to maybe just fix the leak, but install a really, really good finishing trim that I can trust for a longer time. And that kind of like brought me really early on to the decision not to use property management, but to be my own property management, because I wanted to keep the control and the quality and the ability to make all those day-to-day decisions that ends up being the difference between cash flow and not cash flow. Simple as that. Very quickly, our portfolio improved by much when we moved to self-manage. We are giving customer service to our tenants at a very high level. I don't care if this is affordable housing or luxury building, they're getting good service because we want them to stay longer, because replacing them is expensive. We are very smart and efficient with our repair and maintenance. We're doing a lot to provide good housing on a budget. And I thought regular property management are just the way they are built, they cannot give me that service. So that's a big statement. It's changing a little bit now. My main goal with Keezy is to change that, but I do think that it's not a passive income to own real estate. If you're looking for
Yeah,
passive income, that's not passive.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting take on it too, because I think a lot of people do look at real estate as something passive for the very reason that Mike just brought up, which is they just hire a property manager and kind of set it and forget it.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience of investing, you mentioned at the top that you had invested in a couple properties back east, so in Atlanta and other cities out in the eastern U.S. How did you manage those, or as you've gone to a self-managed plan, have you moved away from buying property so far away?
Yeah, this is a great example. When I had a property manager, I started with property management. What do I know about running properties in Texas and in Tennessee, in Memphis as well? We had real estate. There was almost no cash flow, and it was way off what our Excel spreadsheet told us. So these were the first property managers that we filed. We simply filed them, got in touch with the tenants, told them, hey, we're running the properties from now on. And the difference was huge. The tenant loved us. We had great relationship with them. We were able to remotely solve problems. I did send one time, I had to send somebody from Seattle to Atlanta to supervise a larger repair, but it was still cheaper than paying ongoing property management fees and get tenants replaced every year, because I don't know how those property managers are choosing their tenants, but it's not in my favor for sure. I ran those properties on my own for, I believe, maybe 2 years. And then I also sold them with a realtor, of course, but remotely. And that was just fine. So
Do you
that was a
think is
big
that
proof of concept for me.
Do you think there's a good strategy in doing that? So, for example, you're in Seattle, so it's a pretty expensive market. You obviously bought in those other places because the markets were a little lower. And like I know people here that do something similar. They buy like in Cleveland, Ohio, or they buy in
Mhm.
other cities like this where the cost is low. Do you think there's still a sound strategy to doing that? Basically being able to buy at a lower market, but self-managing it to try and keep a control of the
I
costs.
think it's possible. It's not easy, it's work. So it depends on where you are in life. Um, I stopped using property management when I left my Microsoft job. So I could afford, I had the time to spend on the remote management. If you're still working full time and you're buying real estate, maybe you want to pay that fee, that hefty fee, just to be completely hands-on, and that's fine too. But I think in any case, you have to read the reports. You have to understand what you were built on, and you have to babysit those companies. Otherwise, they just, they run loose. Not all of them. Some are doing a great job, but you got to be on top of it. It's not a set it and forget it type of deal. It's a couple of thousands of dollars of a house. There's lots of repair and maintenance. There's people involved. There's liability involved. And from my experience, again, the one thing that it's not is passive.
So you developed a software platform that kind of handles the day-to-day stuff.
Mhm.
I'm sure that handles your billing. Does it handle like background checks and verifying the tenants? Tell us a little bit about the software you run.
Yeah. Well, first of all, we like to call it service as a software and not software as a service. Because
Okay,
what
that's
we really
backwards.
do, yeah, what we really do is we can do all or nothing or whatever in between you want us to do. So the way Keezy works is we have something that's called key holders, which are individuals that are driving around town and they have access to your property. They have keys or access instructions, and they have key boxes, and they have printers in their car, and whatever you might need to own a property. And when you decide you want us to do something for you, you just click a few buttons and off we go to work for you. We can run everything or nothing or anything in between. So you pay us a monthly subscription, a very, very cheap monthly subscription to be at your service. And you can consider us your landlord concierge. Some landlords say, we're hands off, do everything and bill me. And then we bill them when we go to work. Others say, I want to know everything that's going on and I'll decide who will handle what. And that's fine too. Complete modular, complete up to you how you want to use our services. We're just like your lovely secretary, available whenever you want us.
Interesting. How does that work in? I could see that working in a market like Seattle, where
Mhm.
you have people already kind of there, but like say you're in some tiny city in Idaho, uh, are you gonna be able to facilitate that?
So right now we are only locally we're in Washington State, Pierce, King, Snohomish County, and two more counties we just got into is Thurston, and I can't remember the last one. But we are expanding, so we will be available in more states in the United States, hopefully in the near future. But yeah, it requires some operation, so requires certain amount of gig employees basically that are just they have other things that they do, but they are trained to do our work as well. There is a training that we call them key holders. We have a training system for them. It's not just random people from the street. They know how to handle day-to-day problem in property management. Some of them has a broker's license because for some of the work you actually need to have a license. So yeah, right now we are in Washington State, but the idea is to basically become the Zillow of property management, if you will. Just click a
I
button,
get
we'll
that.
solve the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you obviously having done property management in that market before, you have a list of vendors that you use for your own work.
Mhm.
Are you pulling from that list to help build your business as well? So that network is kind of you're just expanding out and
Yeah.
yeah.
Obviously, it was very easy for me to start Keezy in Washington State because I already have a large portfolio here, so I had a good base to start with. But when a landlord joins Keezy, one of the things we do is we do an onboarding call where we um, ask the landlord all the service preference questions. A lot of the landlords, they have their own vendors. So our system is built in a way where if you want me to send your plumber, I'll send your plumber. You have an electrician, I'll send your electrician. You don't, I'll send someone else. There is basically, think about it as like this huge system of if then that's fully automatic. And we sit down with you one time and we define your if and then. And from that moment on, you get service based on what you told us. If you want to change something, just gotta let us know and we'll change it. It is customizable to an extent of anything between Monday to Fridays. I want you to let me know and I'll decide. And in the weekends, just roll with it. I don't want to be involved. You can put us on vacation mode. You can really customize it any way you want. So we really give the landlord the full spectrum of services to choose how they want to roll with us.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit then just about that journey, so to speak, right? So you've
Mhm.
as you've been moving along, obviously your real estate investing has gotten more sophisticated and better over time. You decide to pivot into trying to solve these property management problems by developing a piece of software. Had you ever developed software before? Like, what does this process feel like for you guys in terms of making the decision to proceed with the software
Mhm.
tool? And then what sort of hurdles have you encountered, at least just in building to this stage?
Yeah, I've never developed a software before. We've, hired and teamed with some people to help us out. It's been a painful journey. In the halfway through the journey, I would say AI got exploded and also changed a little bit of how we do things. So we started with developing our own app, spent a lot of time and effort on that, and then we said, actually, we don't need that. We just need the connectors. We just need the AI bots. We just need the if and then in the background. So that's what we're doing today. Basically, we tell landlords whatever property management software you use is fine by us. We just come in the back and plug our people into whatever you want. So that's, different, unique type of model. Takes time to explain and maybe a little bit of time to implement. But at the end of the day, when a client calls us for support or calls or chats, or there's many ways to get to Keezy, when your tenant calls us, we immediately see everything we need to see about your property, your preference of service, and then we're able to provide a service based on your requirements. A lot of AI. We actually, an AI bot answers the phone when you call Keezy, and that bot knows immediately who you are, where you're calling from. Is it on septic? Is it on sewer? Is the landlord local? Is the landlord out of town? What's the maximum that I can spend without permission? All of these things in the system. And that's how we roll. And we connect to we offer our own property management tools for the smaller landlords. For the larger landlords, we'll just plug ourselves in like a puzzle. We'll just plug our parts into whatever you have. So it's a very revolutionary 2025 new age, because you don't need any more software, if you ask me. The softwares are there, the tools exist. It's more of putting them together and use the AI to make the decisions of when do I go to this software, where do I go to that software, what's a work order, what's not a work order, when should I add in a plumber, where should I add in an electrician. So that's the thing we are handling, those types of things. And it's very, very robotic, automatic, and mind-blowing to see the things we've achieved here with AI in the last year.
Yeah. So as a project manager, then how does that project go? Like, I mean, did you just show up to your team with a list of, these are the features or these are the pain points I've encountered over the years? How do we solve them? I mean, working in AI specifically, I mean, it's pretty cutting edge for a lot of people, and probably still kind of hard to find good support. I mean, you've got people who are experts, but they're probably not everywhere just yet.
Yeah.
And so what would you say have been maybe the biggest struggles, or maybe even surprises, in terms of, maybe something was easier than you thought it would be because of AI technologies, or, maybe more difficult to get done because it was hard to find the expertise?
Well, first of all, I'm very surprised with myself, but I taught myself AI and coding at the highest levels. I spent a lot of time training myself because it's hard to find good people and nobody understands. Sometimes you get answer you're not sure. I felt like I'm not able to do a deep dive discussion with tech people, so I actually spent a lot of time training myself. I think I brought myself to a pretty good level. I still say the CTO of the company is ChatGPT, but I hired him. So that's kind of like the first thing. The second thing I think this is the key to starting a business in today's world, is the flowcharts. Just sit with your team and draw the day-to-day process of your work, and then start thinking about, where do I have humans in the process? Sometimes you need humans. There's things that you will forever need humans for, but where there's a human and I can eliminate the human, or save the human time, or move the human to a different area where it's needed most. So my team knows that my favorite is those big diagrams. We have this huge whiteboard, and every few weeks we sit down, we draw our processes, and we see, okay, this we can automate, this we can add, this is still manual, this needs to change. And then slowly we add automations into our workflows. At the same time, we have a couple of AI brains that we're training that basically every day and every new experience makes them smarter.
So in my current day job, I feel this pain point very greatly. They have antiquated systems that one department sends out a list of orders that need to be handled, and then each department has to create another list, like an order sheet for their staff to do, and it, every time I'm sitting here for 10 hours a week entering data into an Excel spreadsheet, I'm thinking in the back of my head, this data has already been entered once. Why are we entering it a second time and creating? It's like the error prone portion of this is the person entering the data the second time or the third time, and it takes two or three people looking it over to make sure the schedule's right and the equipment's set into the right department. And every time I see this, I think there's a better way. And I like it's harsh to say that you want to eliminate the human part of it, but the human part of it is the part that's prone to error. And I like that you said that. I also feel for the small guy and the jobs that are lost, but at the same time, it is what it is. You know what I mean? I get that 100%.
But
So
there's new jobs that are developing. So there will be
yeah,
jobs that are lost, but there's also new job opportunities that are coming out from this. So the way I see it, in property management, you will never be able to take away the key holder, right? Like somebody will
yeah,
have to drive around, open the door, meet the tenant, do the inspection, um, things like that. We can do more of that. If we do more of that, we'll have happier tenants because the
yeah,
tenants don't care who puts the data in the system. You're not helping anyone. But if you're showing up and you can see that the tenant needs help with something, or there is a problem that's unsolved, or you're inspecting the building more often, you'll get happier tenants. Happier tenants stay longer. You'll make more money. They'll be more happy. And you can pay your employees better.
100%. And
So it,
me as the person that's entering the data for the third time isn't pulling his hair out, wondering why you're doing that. I would much rather be working on another project.
yeah,
So
exactly.
like, yeah,
Exactly. And by the way, there is also, so I always say, like the data mining part, AI can save so much time on data. We're already doing this in so many ways, it's mind blowing. But you still need a human at the end of the day to read all this data and make smart decisions based on the data. And an AI
yes,
bot will not do that, at least not in the near future, maybe one day. So as I'm saying, there's new opportunities for people. I definitely think people need to be on top of it and learn and be creative and think about these new opportunities because this is happening. The world is changing and we just, gotta live with it.
Yeah, no, I love that. So let's talk a little bit more about just sort of the Keezy journey in terms of like your business experience and as the CEO of the company. You've done a lot of things. It's kind of interesting listening to you kind of go through your career, having moved from sort of corporate job where you're working at, major corporation that's got lots of systems in place and all that kind of stuff. You start moving out into real estate and you start to develop, your way of doing business and understanding how things work and all that kind of stuff. And now you've grown. And I do want to talk more about multifamily or multi-tenant properties. But now you've moved into like this realm of entrepreneurship where you've actually spun up a business. And I guess you've done some versions of this before with your
Mm-hmm.
organization for property investment and stuff like that. So you've done a few things like this, but, not being from the software space specifically in terms of being somebody who owns the platform. And then also in trying to manage that company, how do you start to prepare for, or like, you've got to come up with a strategy for growing this company and developing it. And I imagine you're going to say Excel spreadsheets, but how do you, actually start putting together the strategy? I think for a lot of young entrepreneurs or people who are maybe just getting started, they're not clear on what it is they want to do, or they have an idea for hey, man, it'd be better if we could do X. But I don't know that they really sit down and think about what or how they actually would go about achieving what it is they're talking about. And so I wonder if you talk about just in your own mind, how you put together sort of the strategy for this in the first place. I mean, you obviously identified a problem and decided to go after it, but can you talk about that? And then let's talk a little bit about just like, as you're into it, now you've got to grow this thing. And, we talked already about a couple pain points and getting into new markets and things like that. So can we talk about just sort of, I guess, the overall strategy of Keezy as a business owner and how you plan to move forward with it?
Yeah. So I was nurturing Keezy in my mind for a couple of years before I launched it. And what I did with my own property management is I started collecting data on how much time we are spending on property management tasks versus how much doors we run. And kind of like I started to collect this basically P&L of that specific line of work. And I also started looking into buying property management companies that already exist, which exposed me to the P&L of existing property management firms. And I found, and this was more than 3 years ago, I found that I'm extremely more efficient than your standard property management. This was before AI. This was before we had a bot that's called Sam that answers the phone, or Cody Compliance that writes us the notices. Already 3 years ago, just because I was using technology and automation and I was hyper efficient anywhere I could, I was basically operating with one full-time employee on $150. Well, not one full-time, one part-time employee on $150, where I know that a standard property management firm would hire a full-time for $75. So that's a huge difference already. And we drilled down to that and we started looking at P&Ls of other companies, and we couldn't find any explanation to this other than just this is how it was always done. Kind of like if you think about insurance agents and travel agents, they exist, you pay them commission, but today you can go on Expedia and book your whole trip in a minute, or you can go online and buy insurance in 2 clicks. Why do we have those companies in the middle? Now, we definitely need property managers. Not everyone are available to go and run properties on their own, and that's fine. But something in the business model didn't make sense to me. So then I started to break it down to the hour and the job that we do. And I realized that if I create a menu of everything that the property management is doing, and I'll just sell the services a la carte, I will be saving a lot of money to landlords. And I'm still earning, because guess what? When I go to work, I get paid. And when I don't go to work, I don't. And that's fine. And I don't have expectation to get paid when I don't go to work. So that's kind of like how we started, and we've built a pro forma to this thing. And then we saw, like, when we did our evaluation, that at about $1,000, if we run $1,000 on those, this gives us enough wiggle room to have enough people to be very available, to offer 24/7 coverage, and to offer people basically everything they need at an incredibly affordable rate, probably doing an as good, if not better, job than a standard property management, and just roll with it. So when we said, okay, let's run a pilot, I also am surrounded with friends that follow my work for years and been begging me to run their properties for them. So we started the pilot, and we got $100 under management in less than 3 months.
Oh, wow.
The first 30 or 40 are close friends that knows me very well and trust me, but the other 60 are word of mouth. It's just heard and joined. We've been operating for a little over a year now. We run 350 doors. We have zero retention. Like, nobody left us. Nobody left us. Everyone's super happy because of the flexibility, right?
Yeah.
Do it. Use us when you need us. Don't use us when you don't need us. We get the job done. Where I claim we're doing a better job than a full-fledged property management. Because we give
minimally,
you
just your model there, where you're really only paying if we're working, like that
Exactly.
right there is such a differentiator in the space. And so it's funny talking about, exactly what you said, which is just sort of legacy companies just doing things the way they've always been done. And your approach, I think, especially for people with maybe a small portfolio, if you only have a handful of properties and you're losing all of your profit to your current, property manager, something like this, it seems like, would be really appealing.
Yeah. And we started with smaller ones. Obviously, if you have a single family home, it's a no-brainer. We run homes here that are rented for $6,000-$7,000 a month. People used to pay $600 a month in property management fees. They pay us $45 per month for the exact same job. And then if something happens, we bill them. But property management also bill them when something happens, right? Like they charge extra to replace a tenant. They charge full month rent to replace a tenant. I charge $950 because I don't care what the rent is. I do the exact same job. I don't care if you collect 6,000, 5,000, 10,000, or 1,000. My work is the same. I budget, I believe, something like 10 hours to rent an apartment, so $950. We're good. Our key holders are getting paid $25, $30. There is profit for everyone there. And the bigger we are, the less we work because we also do route optimization. Think about key holders like Uber drivers. They don't just go left, right, left, right. They wake up in the morning and there is a bot that builds them the perfect schedule, minimize their mileage, optimize their day. So with all of these things in place, we are very profitable while we're providing a better service. No
Yeah, I love
complaints.
that. And I think that that's like the big open door where AI is going to start changing things for the positive.
Yeah.
You know, all you hear on LinkedIn or in the news or whatever is that about AI taking over the world and destroying everybody or whatever. But I do think that there's a real strong role for it in places like this. And I think that your business in particular is a great example of sort of how humans and AI bot overlords will work together in the future, you know. And certainly, you know, you'll be able to continue to optimize, and with data, you'll become more intelligent and things like that. And so, you know, you'll end up building a very powerful platform on a lot less effort than it took to do it just, you know, a few years
Yeah,
ago.
I better because I work very hard. I'll tell you one thing about a startup, a tech startup versus everything else I did. When we started Keezy, I thought to myself, what's the big deal? Just another company. I already do property management. I already know real estate. Bring it on. It's a lot more work than I thought. I love it. I enjoy every minute, but I also say out loud multiple times, this is my last company, so it better blow up.
Well, it's
Can
funny
you
because just last year I was working in a tech startup in the real estate realm, and that was actually one of the bigger hurdles for me as, you know, a product designer and as a you know, fractional CMO in that company, was that I didn't come from the real estate space, and the software we're building is for the title industry, title and settlement industry, and trying to introduce
Nice.
AI and things like that.
Yeah.
And so, but the depth of knowledge required to get into the deep learning, the stuff that you've encountered just through experience working with property managers,
Mm-hmm.
is really hard to just teach, you know. And so for myself, that was certainly a blind spot for me. It required leadership from people on the team who are much more experienced, and then bringing on new people was really challenging because they don't understand the work. And so, so AI, you know, obviously helped us a lot in terms of learning, but then applying AI to prospective customers, I think will be a real game changer for that software.
I think this is the magical time of professionals from the service industry. If it's real estate, insurance, travel agents, concierge services, house cleaning, these are the people that needs to step up now and start AI first companies. Get rid of the manual work, focus on the service, lower your prices, and in exchange provide a better service because you're using all these technologies to optimize everything. That's the future. And there is a lot of opportunities here for people to, you know, start new businesses. And all of those people that will lose their work because of AI, that's their opportunity. Join these types of companies and help build automation and help save time and reduce manual work and really just we always say at Keezy, humans are the most important asset in the business. So can we not have a human, you know, do Excel spreadsheets over and over and over? Can we keep the humans for where they're really needed? That's the plan or like the vision.
so say for example, Joe the plumber wants to follow your business model, wants to automate everything with
Mhm.
AI, get everything kind of going down that road. What would you recommend him to do first? Learn how to program or hire someone out to do it for them? You went down the learning on your own
Yeah.
kind of thing. Is there a certain model of AI to study? Like, what would your
Yeah.
recommendations for Joe the plumber be?
First of all, fully understand the power of AI. Teach yourself not to program because ChatGPT can program for you, but teach yourself a little bit about AI and the potential and the opportunity. And then draw your workflow. Draw what happens from the moment the caller calls you and until it becomes a sale. What are the steps? Just build the steps and then look at that and see what can be done automatically or where does a human absolutely necessary. And I can tell you that if you're a plumber, everything can be automatic up to the moment that you're actually going to the client and fix the problem. I actually think that being a plumber today is one of the biggest opportunities. Plumbers and electricians that will catch this, they will build incredible companies. And then you need to start working on the automation. So if you're tech savvy enough to make that happen on your own, great. And if you can't, there's so many agencies that can help you as long as you bring them a very detailed spec. And the spec you can do because you've been doing this job yourself. You know exactly what happens. You know what a caller is asking when they call you. You know what it takes to book a meeting with them. You know how optimizing schedule is, very easy to do robotically or automatically, and that's what I would do. And I actually help. We have a lot of vendors at Keezy, and I love helping people and earn some good karma on the way. So I've been doing that. I've been drawing those sketches for vendors that I work with often, and then they go and they start working on it step by step.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, I think that it is really interesting. And I always hate talking about these, like teach ourselves AI to cut out the programmers, because our guy Mike here just finished a programming boot camp. So I always feel bad talking about AI rising in the programming space. But I will say that, like, for a person like Mike, who's just taught himself all the technology, and just like you were saying in your situation, I mean, it's almost like a superpower now, because you'll be able to take your knowledge and apply it to what AI can do for you. And it's really incredible. I mean, even in my own experience, I mean, I come from the visual side of marketing and design. So as an art director or creative director, and but now, like, even I'm able to go through and build full-blown applications, with authentication and all the things that, used to be really challenging or costly. It would be really expensive to get like a prototype off the ground. And at this point, I've done 3 separate ones that, are all basically fully self-contained. Now, are they perfect? Probably not. And if you're a developer, my code would probably be disgusting. But nonetheless, it does the job. It says it performs like it should. And that's all been empowered by just working with AI. So it is pretty incredible how that stuff works. So to just kind of keep your journey going a little bit, or maybe talk about sort of what's next for Keezy. Obviously, scaling is a big piece of it, and trying to find new opportunities and grow your network, so to speak, because you are dependent on sort of human operators. What does that look like for you? I mean, obviously the model in your local area worked, and it seems that you're following the trajectory that a lot of startups do, which is friends and family, and then sort of expand from there, and hopefully by referral, and you get sort of the lowest hanging fruit first. But as you start to break into other markets, and actually, I mean, semi-recently, we had a guy that is a big property management guy on the podcast. And, so I know that there are people in this space that you're competing with, so what are you encountering, or what do you expect to encounter as you move into other markets? And what do you think that scale is going to look like?
Yeah, so we've just had our first roadshow in Texas, which was really successful. We also we have a couple of very, very exciting opportunity in Washington State that are final stages, so can't talk about them yet, but they will take us to the next level in Washington. I am not targeting clients of property managers. I am right now focusing on self-managed landlords. And there are a lot. Like in Texas, we're talking to a couple of groups that has thousands, and they have an in-house property management solution. And to them, what we do is we say, we are a puzzle. We can just answer the phone and dispatch for you. We can just write notices for you. We can take whatever you don't like to do, or whatever your team is messing up the most, and we can take that off your hand, have your team focus on things that you want them to fix. And we've been having really interesting conversation with the larger operators. A lot of them has pain in leasing. And when we deep dive into that, then the pain is leasing is because their team doesn't spend enough time on showing apartments. Why? Because they're busy writing notices and answering maintenance calls. So just take our answering service bot, let us take care of that, and shuffle your people into where you have a different pain, for example. So this was a very interesting tour. I just got back, that was last week, and I think we are going to get some interesting opportunities from that. Have a feeling I'll be back in Texas soon. I'm excited. Also, my son asked for a cowboy hat and I didn't pick it up, so I gotta go back. Um, and so that's kind of like our next big step, is to get into the larger landlords and to completely modular our product and sell it in pieces.
Yeah. So can you talk about, and maybe this is too inside baseball or technical, but I'm just trying to understand how the connection works or the interoperability works. Like, I mean, I guess sort of the traditional model would be, if a company exposes some API access and you can, get your tendrils into their organization that way. Is that how you're approaching it with AI, or is there some blind spot I have to AI that's actually, doing some of that work on its own? I mean, I've used agentic AIs to log in and connect to websites without using API. So I'm just curious how you guys are doing it on your end to, I guess, offer the flexibility that you're talking about, where you can actually connect to anyone's
it
platform.
is APIs at this point, and we do have some coding, and we have some coding people in the background. They are the last one to leave. Let's put it this way. So we have different product. For example, we have a bot. His name is Cody Compliance, and it's trained on Washington state rules and regulation to the highest level of accuracy. It can write notices, it can answer legal question, and obviously it gets better as time progresses. That bot we can API into your property management platform. And then you can chat with the bot and say, hey, this tenant from this apartment didn't pay rent. The bot can read the ledger, the bot can write the notice, spits out the notice, perfect, ready to go. For example, we have the answering service bot that will answer the phone and take information about your maintenance request and ask questions. And when it's done, it takes that, textualizes the whole thing, throws it into the repair and maintenance platform that you're using. So I can't tell you that we work with all the softwares out there. We work with a few major ones right now. We are developing this based on our clients' needs. So our philosophy is client come in, asks for something, we get it done.
Yeah, I love that. No, I think that's really interesting. And like I say, I just used a platform the other day to run a test, through a platform I'm trying to get out. And I was actually able to use it, and it would just log into the website and create its own user account and stuff like that. So we're getting really to an exciting place with AI, where, because I know, just at least in my experience in working with the software company last year, I know that trying to connect, especially with older or legacy software, that's maybe not very current or doesn't maybe have smart API access and things like that, or maybe has really dirty API access, can be really challenging. So it's exciting that there's some new and interesting ways coming up to be able to access systems, just because it's so difficult to try and stay caught up with every platform that's out there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know what happens in the AI labs and how they're training their next model, but I'm sure we will not need API soon. Right? It makes sense to me that from where we are now, how much more complicated is it for the bot to just log in and get the job done? But for now, we're obviously focusing on companies that do have open APIs and, those different ways to manipulate that. I can't tell you that I have a couple of developers that work with me. Every time I have a meeting with a client, I come back and they go, what did you promise this time? And I bring them coffee and I'm like, sit down. And I'm like, we're
You're not
doing
gonna
this.
like this.
We need to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's
one thing.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it really is cool. One thing I want to talk about that we just sort of skipped over, and it's probably out of order in this conversation, but that I would like to just kind of touch on here in the last closing minutes, is you mentioned that you had kind of come across the discovery that it was more beneficial to get into multi-tenant housing or properties instead of single tenant or single homes and things like that. I mean, besides the obvious idea that you can make 4 rents instead of 1. What other reasons would you say, or for maybe an initial investor, does it make sense to just skip the single home altogether and just jump right into multi-home properties or multi-family properties?
Absolutely. Start with 2, 3, 4, anything but 1, because when you have 1, of course, there's the obvious things and there's the economy of scale and all of that. But if you have 1 tenant and they're not paying rent, then you are bleeding. If it's a duplex and 1 tenant is not paying rent, then you're still okay. If it's a 4-plex, you're even better. So it feels scarier, but it's actually safer. It's kind of like with the W-2 job, right? Like if you have one job, you lose it, you lost it, there's no income. But if you have a fourplex, then you kind of like you have 4 income streams. And the chances that all 4 won't pay at the same time are less. So, and non-payment of rent and eviction is part of the game, unfortunately. And I have a few single-family house that I kept from earlier journey, and I can tell you that no matter how big we are and how much cash flow we have, when a tenant in a single-family homes tell me they're moving out, I'm not calm, because now I have this expensive vacancy and no one is paying for it. Much different when it's a larger complex. You don't even care. You don't know the tenant. So it's the economy of scale, but it's also the, I always say I'm an anxiety-driven person. Everything that I have is because I'm scared that I will not have anything. And it's a good trade if you control it. It's a good trade because sometimes your fear are making you make decisions that are actually not smart. It feels safer to have a single family home, just one small, but it's actually not. It's much safer to have a building.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I think, the cost is, can be prohibitive to move into like a multifamily property but I like what you're saying, even just like a duplex even.
Exactly.
Maybe you can't afford to leap to, a 60 unit complex or something, but maybe you could jump into a duplex or a triplex before,
or even build
maybe
an IDU. Build an IDU in the back. Create income from more than one source on the investments that you already have to start. Yeah. Not everyone will go and buy multifamily buildings tomorrow, but squeeze as much income as you can from different sources. Because if one leaves, then there's another one. There is also the notion of vacancy, right? Like when a house is empty, that's not good. Sometimes you get squatters, sometimes you get damages, sometimes you get a water leak and you don't know because you haven't been there all week and there's no tenant. So by having more than one tenant, you also have someone watching.
Yeah, so, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, hey, we're starting to get to the end here. Can we just take a quick minute and have you break down how can people get in touch with you if they'd like to try out Keezy or learn more about it? Where can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to Keezy.ai, so K and the word easy, and it stands for give me the keys, I'll make it easy. Because at the end of the day, when you join Keezy, you give us a copy of your keys, and then we're available to serve you whenever you want. So Keezy.ai, if you go on the website, then obviously a chatbot will attack you and offer you to answer questions and to talk to us. And then if you ask, it will let you schedule a 30-minute consultation call with me that we call Optimize Your Operation. And then we go on a call and we talk for 30 minutes about what you like about your properties, what you don't like, how can we help you, how can we not help you. And these are fun conversations. And that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. Of course, I'm also on LinkedIn and social media and all of these things. But honestly, if you want my full attention, book a 30-minute Optimize Your Operation chat. I'm happy to talk always.
Awesome.
Love it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I am really, really excited for the opportunity and appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much to everybody who tunes into the show this week and every week. And we'll see you guys next time.